Letters of indemnity, allowing the smooth running of shipping and trade finance within commodity trading, a very misunderstood area of our business. Hi, I'm Richard Watts, founder of HR Maritime. Welcome back to Commodity Brief. In this episode, we're going to continue our series looking at the fundamentals of commodity trading, and we're going to be looking in particularly at letters of indemnity. So letters of indemnity is quite a wide subject, and essentially there are two different types of letters of indemnity which are used in our business today. So we have a very quick look at them. We're not going to have the time to go into as much detail as we'd like, but it's one of those subjects which is very important to have at least a fundamental knowledge of. So first of all, the two different types that we look at. One is used in trade finance, so particularly the oil trade, and basically it is in the place of providing a lot of the documents when you're presenting documents for payment under a letter of credit. And so the letter of credit might call for a number of different documents: for the invoice, for the bill of lading, for the inspection certificates, for the certificate of origin, and the different documents related to the cargo. And essentially the seller who is looking to get paid for the goods, they are saying to the buyer, we have not received these documents yet. So here is our invoice. And also, as we have not received these other documents yet, we are going to give you this letter of indemnity. We're going to indemnify you against the consequences of you not receiving these documents. Now, it's interesting because it's only used in oil trading. We very, very rarely see it in the agri side of the business, in the metal side of the business. So as you'll understand, the idea is to indemnify someone against the consequences of them accepting to proceed along a certain course of action. Now, obviously, this indemnity is only worth the company which is issuing it. So we need to be very, very careful who is issuing it. So the most commonly used forms of LOIs, letter of indemnities, that we use are in the shipping industry. And there are many, many different ones which are used on a regular basis. So again, the idea is to indemnify someone against the consequences of performing the action that we are asking them to do. By far the most common letter of indemnity is for discharge of cargo without presentation of the original bills of lading. So the bill of lading is a receipt for the cargo. The idea is that when the vessel arrives at the discharging port, you turn up at the discharging port with the bill of lading and the ship captain will give you the cargo back. Now, often happens that the bills of lading are not available. They are still stuck in the banking channel, or it might be a short voyage, and so they have not arrived at the destination yet. And so what happens is the charterer will often ask the ship owner to discharge the cargo to the receiver or to their party of their choice. And the ship owner will then turn around and say, I don't want to because I want the bills of lading. The charterer will then say, okay, well, I will give you a letter of indemnity. I will indemnify you against the consequences of discharging this cargo without receiving the original bills of lading. Now, the risk to the ship owner is that somebody else turns up with that original bill of lading and says, I want my cargo back. And so essentially the risk to the ship owner is the value of the cargo itself. And so they have to be certain that the party that is issuing that letter of indemnity is able to honor the guarantee that they have given. And sometimes you see LOIs being countersigned by a bank because then we have the additional guarantee, the liability will be honored. Now, there are many, many different forms of letters of indemnity which are issued on a daily basis. Unfortunately, there are two in particular which are issued which really shouldn't be. One is for clausing bills of lading. So basically putting a mention on a bill of lading or removing a mention on a bill of lading, which is essentially committing fraud on the receiving party. And so the LOI as a legal document will not be worth anything because it is to facilitate an illegal act. Also, backdating bills of lading, so putting the wrong date on the bill of lading, again, exactly the same situation. But we have a number of situations which could revolve around adding dye to the cargo, commingling two cargoes of oil, or similar aspects like that, where basically we are asking the ship owner to do something. They are not strictly obligated to do so under the charter party, but they're willing to do so if we then will guarantee them that the consequences will not fall upon them. Now, one thing that we need to be very careful about with letters of indemnity is what is our liability? What is the risk to us as the party which is issuing them? And can we control that risk? So we might be in a situation where we have already provided the bills of lading to our receiver. And so if we issue an LOI to the ship owner to indemnify them against consequences of delivering the bills of lading, we will also want our receiver to give us a back-to-back LOI in order for us not to bear those risks ourselves. Now, it's very important to read the wording of an LOI if ever you don't understand the wording, to seek advice, because they are very, very, very tricky documents and they can incur a huge liability. Now, there are a lot of resources for information on LOIs that are available on the internet. First of all, you have P&I clubs, protection and indemnity clubs, which have a lot of information on LOIs and the risks that you are exposing yourself to in terms of issuing them, but also accepting them and receiving them and believing they are a guarantee for you. Skuld, another P&I club, have an awful lot of information, and otherwise on a lot of legal firm websites, you can find some very, very, very good information. So here, Holman Fennick, they have some very good articles about the practical problems of receiving or issuing bills of lading. And they do say, is this the biggest risk that a ship owner can take? Potentially. So that basically brings us to the end of looking at LOIs, letters of indemnity. It is a vastly complicated subject. We could spend a lot more time looking at it, but that's all the time we have for today. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Commodity Brief. Please click back to find more subjects. Thank you.